Today I'm going over the section in chapter 6 called The Only Answer. Remember that the Holy Spirit is the answer, not the question. The ego always speaks first. It is capricious and does not mean its maker well, right? The ego is not our friend. It does not mean us well. It believes, and correctly, that its maker may withdraw his support from it at any moment. That's us. The ego is afraid that we will withdraw our belief in it. That's why it works so hard to get us to identify with it. If it meant you well, it would be glad, as the Holy Spirit will be glad when he has brought you home and you no longer need his guidance. See, the ego is not glad for us. The ego does not want good things for us, but he's saying the Holy Spirit does. Holy Spirit will be glad when we bring our mind home to truth. The ego does not regard itself as part of you. Herein lies its primary error, the foundation of its whole thought system. The entire ego thought system is founded on a false premise. It's not real. So that's why he's saying, here's the primary error, the foundation of the entire ego thought system. When God created you, he made you part of him. That is why attack within the kingdom is impossible. You made the ego without love, and so it does not love you. Okay? Spirit is love. God is love. Our truth is love. When we made the ego, that is separate from God. That is separate from spirit. That's separate from our truth, and it's separate from love. There is no love in the ego's thought system. Only special love, which is reserved for certain people and then not for other people. That's the ego's definition of love. That's not real love. Love is all-encompassing. Love is who and what we really are. You could not remain within the kingdom without love. And since the kingdom is love, you believe that you are without it. So because we believe that we are egos and that we are separate from God and that we are locked out of heaven, this demonstrates our belief that we are not love and that we are not being loved. But God, Spirit, is love. And that is what we are. But we just don't know it right now. We're confused. So we believe we are without it. That's what egos believe. They believe in lack. This enables the ego to regard itself as separate and outside its maker. Yes, that's what we believe when we identify with ego. Thus, speaking for the part of your mind that believes you are separate and outside the mind of God. The ego then raised the first question that was ever asked, but one it can never answer. Before we started this crazy dream that we believe that we're in right now, we were just one with God, and there were no questions. There was nothing to ask. There was just being love. But then the ego was made, and all of a sudden there was a question. Who am I? What am I? But the ego was never able to answer that question. That question, what are you, was the beginning of doubt. Okay, that's what the ego is. It's all about doubt, doubting love, doubting God, doubting our truth. The ego has never answered any questions since, although it has raised a great many, right? Because the ego is always questioning spirit. It's always questioning love. It's always questioning wholeness. It doesn't believe in that. It believes in separation and lack. So the ego is always asking lots and lots of questions. Who am I? Who is this person? What is my value? What is my worth? What's important to me? Yet it has never answered any of those questions. It does not have any answers to its questions. And it's designed that way on purpose, to go in a loop, to keep us trapped in the false ego dream. The most inventive activities of the ego have never done more than obscure the question, because you have the answer and the ego is afraid of you. Why do we have the answer to the question, who am I? Because we know we are spirit. There is a part of our mind, our right mind, the part of our mind that identifies with Holy Spirit, that knows who and what we really are. And that is why the ego is afraid of us. It doesn't want us to know this because it means the end of the ego. You cannot understand the conflict until you fully understand the basic fact that the ego cannot know anything. It is not capable of knowing anything, the ego. The Holy Spirit does not speak first, but he always answers, right? So it's always the ego that speaks first and loudest, but the ego has no answers to anything. And Holy Spirit always waits quietly and patiently and actually has the answer to everything, if we choose to listen. Everyone has called upon him, meaning the Holy Spirit, for help at one time or another and in one way or another, and has been answered. Since the Holy Spirit answers truly, he answers for all time, which means that everyone has the answer now. Why is that true? Because there is no such thing as time. There is only the now moment. So in every now moment, when we ask Holy Spirit for help, Holy Spirit will help us. Holy Spirit will give us the answers. Holy Spirit is the right part of our mind that is always there speaking to us, letting us know the truth of who and what we really are. The ego cannot hear the Holy Spirit, but it does believe that part of the mind that made it is against it. It interprets this as a justification for attacking its maker. It believes that the best defense is attack and wants you to believe it. Unless you do believe it, you will not side with it, and the ego feels badly in need of allies, though not of brothers. Right? So ego wants allies to believe, oh, we're separate. Oh, we're being attacked. Oh, we need to attack others. It's looking for allies to also believe that. But it's not looking for brothers. Brothers means spirit, loving one another, knowing that we are one with one another, knowing that we are all one with God. And ego has no interest in that. That's why it's not looking for brothers. Perceiving something alien to itself in your mind, the ego turns to the body as its ally because the body is not part of you. So to further convince us that we are ego and not spirit, it depends upon us identifying with our body. This further convinces us that we are separate, that we are lacking, that we are vulnerable, and that we are ego. This makes the body the ego's friend. It is an alliance frankly based upon separation. If you side with this alliance, you will be afraid because you are siding with an alliance of fear. So if we believe these things that the ego wants us to believe, we will be in fear and we will feel lack and we will feel separate from our truth, which is love. The ego uses the body to conspire against your mind. And because the ego realizes that its enemy can end them both merely by recognizing that they are not part of you, they join in the attack together. This is perhaps the strangest perception of all, if you consider what it really involves. The ego, which is not real, attempts to persuade the mind, which is real, that the mind is the ego's learning device, and further, that the body is more real than the mind is. So he's saying we have used something that is not real and not true to convince our mind, which is real and is true, that it doesn't exist and that all the false things are real. It's all backwards and upside down. No one in his right mind could possibly believe this. And no one in his right mind does believe it. Now, we are believing this, right? But we're not in our right mind when we do. When we believe the ego's false perception, we are not in our right mind. Hear then the one answer of the Holy Spirit to all the questions the ego raises. You are a child of God, a priceless part of his kingdom, which he created as part of him. Nothing else exists, and only this is real. You have chosen a sleep in which you have had bad dreams, but the sleep is not real, and God calls you to awake. There will be nothing left of your dream when you hear him because you will awaken. Your dreams contain many of the ego's symbols, and they have confused you. Yet that was only because you were asleep and did not know. When you wake, you will see the truth around you, and you will no longer believe in dreams because they will have no reality for you. Yet the kingdom and all that you have created there will have great reality for you, because they are beautiful and true. Beautiful words to say that we are sleeping when we believe the ego's lies, that we are dreaming, and the dreams are not real, they are nightmares. Our real truth is wholeness, is love. In the kingdom where you are and what you are is perfectly certain. There is no doubt, because the first question was never asked. Having finally been wholly answered, it has never been. Meaning the entire ego's dream of separation has never been. Asking the question, who are we, has never been. It's not real. We've always been home, safe, with God in heaven, which is a state of oneness, which is love extending eternally. Being alone lives in the kingdom where everything lives in God without question, because that's who we really are, just beingness. And there are no questions there. We know exactly who we are. There isn't even any consciousness to be contemplating who we are. There's just beingness. The time spent on questioning in the dream has given way to creation and to its eternity. We appear to have given up creation and its eternity for the false dream of the ego. You are as certain as God because you are as true as He is. But what was once certain in your mind has become only the ability for certainty. So what he means is that in this false dream, we have the ability to wake up and know who we really are. That's the ability for certainty. In truth, we are completely certain as to who we are. There are no questions. There's just beingness. Only from the ego's perspective are we unsure, and that is why there is the ability for certainty, because we can get back to certainty by identifying with Holy Spirit and no longer believing the ego's thought system. The introduction of abilities into being was the beginning of uncertainty because abilities are potentials, not accomplishments. A fancy way of saying what I just said, that when we were still at one with God in heaven, we didn't need any abilities because nothing needed to be accomplished. But now that we think that we're separated, we do need to accomplish, knowing once again that we are not separated. And how do we do that? By identifying with Holy Spirit. Your abilities are useless in the presence of God's accomplishments and also of yours. Accomplishments are results that have been achieved. When they are perfect, abilities are meaningless. Right? In heaven with God, abilities are meaningless. There's no need to achieve anything. There's no need to accomplish anything. These things only exist within the framework of the ego, achieving and accomplishing. When they are perfect, abilities are meaningless, right? Because God and heaven are perfect, so abilities are meaningless. It is curious that the perfect must now be perfected. He's making a little joke saying we're already perfect. So, isn't it strange that we need to be perfected, right? He's saying we're already perfect. We don't need to be perfected, but we think we're here in this illusory world of separation. So from that framework, from that perception, we do need to be perfected. We need to get back to our perfection. In fact, it is impossible. Another joke, he's saying it's impossible for the imperfect to be perfected. Why is it impossible? Because we are not imperfect. We've always been perfect. Remember, however, that when you put yourself in an impossible situation, meaning believing in the ego's thought system, you believe that the impossible is possible. Another way of saying it's all upside down. We believe in the wrong thing. We believe in ego's upside down perception. We believe that the impossible, meaning the ego's thought system, is possible. We make it real. We make the ego real. Abilities must be developed before you can use them. This is not true of anything that God created, but it is the kindest solution possible for what you made. So he's saying that abilities must be developed before you can use them within this dream. Now, in our truth, we don't need abilities. We're already perfect. We're already home and one with God. But we think we're separate in this dream right now. So we need to develop these abilities to see correctly, to perceive correctly. And what that means is empowering ourselves to use our mind to know that we are the chooser, and in each now moment to choose spirit. These are the abilities that we need to develop to wake up from the dream. And that this is the kindest solution, the kindest, most gentle, most loving way to wake us up from this dream. In an impossible situation, you can develop your abilities to the point where they can get you out of it, meaning practicing forgiveness. This is what gets us out of the dream. You have a guide to how to develop them. Our guide is Holy Spirit, and the them is referring to our abilities to use to wake us up. But you have no commander except yourself. Holy Spirit will not command. We have to command. We have to identify ourselves as the chooser, the one who has the power to choose between ego or spirit. We are commanding. Holy Spirit doesn't command. Holy Spirit waits patiently because it is the truth. It just waits there, waiting for us to wake up from our dream to perceive our truth. This leaves you in charge of the kingdom, with both a guide to find it and a means to keep it. So we are in charge not of the existence of the kingdom, but of our perception of the kingdom so that we can be a part of it. We have to perceive it. We have to believe it. We have to know our truth in order to be a part of our truth. You have a model to follow who will strengthen your command. That's Jesus. He's the model for us to follow because he already did it. He's teaching us how to strengthen our command because that's what he did. He identified with Holy Spirit. That's how he strengthened his command. So he's modeling that for us. And never detract from it in any way. Meaning that's what Jesus did. He never detracted from his belief in Holy Spirit. That's how he awakened. You therefore retain a central place in your imagined enslavement, right? Because we imagine that we have been enslaved by the ego. It's imagined. We therefore retain a central place in your imagined enslavement, which in itself demonstrates that you are not enslaved. He's saying there's a way out. There's a way out of enslavement. That's identifying with Holy Spirit. So you think you're enslaved. It's not even true. And in the meantime, while you're having this dream that you're enslaved, there's even a way out. You are in an impossible situation only because you think it is possible to be in one. Again, it's so funny because he's saying that our situation is not possible. It's not possible for us to be separated from God, but we think it is, and we think it's impossible to be whole with one another in God. So again, we have it all upside down. What we from our ego perception think is impossible is actually our truth, and what we think is possible is not possible at all. It's all upside down. You would be in an impossible situation if God showed you your perfection and proved to you that you were wrong. This would demonstrate that the perfect are inadequate to bring themselves to an awareness of their perfection, and thus side with the belief that those who have everything need help and are therefore helpless. This is the kind of reasoning in which the ego engages. Right? It's just nonsense. It's just a bunch of lies telling us the exact opposite of what is true to keep us trapped in the nightmare dream of separation. God, who knows that his creations are perfect, does not affront them. This would be as impossible as the ego's notion that it has affronted him. See, now the ego does believe that it has affronted God, but it's not true. It's pretend. And that's why he's saying it's impossible. That is why the Holy Spirit never commands. To command is to assume inequality, which the Holy Spirit demonstrates does not exist. Inequality only appears to exist within the ego's framework, within the ego's thought system. Fidelity to premises is a law of mind, meaning, do you have fidelity to the ego's premises or spirit's premises? And everything God created is faithful to his laws. So when we identify with spirit's premises, we are now in alignment with God's laws. Fidelity to other laws is also possible, meaning us following the ego's laws. It is possible. However, not because the laws are true, because they're not true. We're believing things that are not true, but because you made them, right? We made those laws. We made the laws of the ego. We made the ego's perception. What would be gained if God proved to you that you have thought insanely? Can God lose his own certainty? No, God cannot lose his own certainty. I have frequently said that what you teach you are, right? What we believe that we are is what we are teaching ourselves and everyone else that we are. Would you have God teach you that you have sinned? If he confronted the self you made with the truth he created for you, what could you be but afraid? You would doubt your right mind, which is the only place where you can find the sanity he gave you. That is what we have been doing. We doubt our right mind. We doubt our truth, and we have believed the ego's lies. God does not teach. To teach is to imply a lack, which God knows is not there, right? We don't really have any lack. We are really one with God. God is not conflicted, right? We are in our false dream. We're conflicted, but God is not conflicted. Teaching aims at change, but God created only the changeless. Okay, that's why God is not in this dream. This dream is all about change. It's all about inconsistency. It's all about duality. And that is the opposite of what God is. God is consistent. God is stable. God is just beingness of love. The ego is the exact opposite of all of that. So that's why God is only changeless. So when we're trying to teach and learn here and change our mind, that's what tells us logically that that is not of God, because God is changeless. The separation was not a loss of perfection, but a failure in communication. Okay, because the separation never really happened. So it's not a loss of perfection. We have not lost our perfection. It's a problem of communication. We are not properly communicating in our mind the truth of who and what we and everyone else really is. A harsh and strident form of communication arose as the ego's voice, right? He's talking about the birth of the ego. It was a harsh and strident communication, miscommunication. It could not shatter the peace of God, but it could shatter yours. So this belief in the ego that we suddenly had did not shatter God or heaven. It did not shatter our truth, but it shattered our belief in that truth. That's what he means by it shattered yours. It shattered our peace because we stopped believing in our truth. We stopped believing in wholeness and in love. God did not blot it out because to eradicate it would be to attack it. Okay, so this is often a question that course students ask. It's like, why would God let us, be in this dream and have this nightmare? Why wouldn't he come in and just wake us up and take us home? Well, the answer is because it never really happened. It's all just a figment of our imagination in our mind. And also because that would mean that God would believe that it's real, believe in some sort of separation and attack, and come in to save us from something. That is not of God's world. God never changed. Heaven never changed. The eternal extension of love that we really are never changed. Only our perception of it changed. So that is why we need to be the chooser and choose again. Being questioned, he did not question. So even though God was questioned by the ego, God did not question anything. God doesn't question anything. He merely gave the answer. That's Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit is the answer within our dream to our question of who we are. His answer is your teacher, meaning Holy Spirit. So our answer is following Holy Spirit. When we follow Holy Spirit and identify with our truth of who and what we really are, this is how we answer the question of who am I? And this is how we go home to God.